Miracle Sims, let's go.
Hello, everyone. It's your girl, Miracle Sims, and you're watching the GSL Talk Show. And tonight we're going to be chatting with Dr. Khamsehzadeh, and he is going to be sharing all about the psychedelic evolution. So, stay tuned. Welcome back to the GSL Talk Show. I'm Mr. Jahan Khamsehzadeh. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great today here, Miracle. Thank you. Glad to be here on the show with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're glad to have you on the GSL Talk Show. Welcome and all of that. So I am excited to learn more about you. I see the PhD, so my apology. I guess I should have said Dr. Jahan Khamsehzadeh.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do your, I mean, I don't know if you have patients. I'm assuming. I'm just going to assume that you have patients with doctor. Do they call you Dr. Khamsehzadeh?
No, I'd like to keep us all on equal ground. So all my clients call me Jahan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, either way, man. Yeah. Okay. So I'm excited to hear more about you and your endeavors. So go ahead and let us know a little bit about yourself.
Certainly, the main interest for about 20 years has actually been psychedelics, propelled by a mushroom experience when I was 18, and I was an atheist, suicidal and depressed, and unexpectedly this voice arose in my consciousness, and there was a recognition that it was God, and that kind of created this huge paradigm shift, and it said, we are love and light. Love is the most important thing in the universe. Miles after that is learning, and everything else is so insignificant to that, you don't even have to worry about it. So I continue my trajectory for about 20 years to study consciousness, which includes like a deep sense of spirituality, you know, for me, a devotion to God or a sense of oneness. And it was also through the help of psychedelics that I felt my sexuality also really awoken. And I was 19, the first time I took MDMA. And of course, I'd had sex, I'd masturbated, but I felt my whole energetic system really come online and like really feel a deep sense of wholeness and pleasure throughout my being. And I was like, how has this dimension of my whole soul been kept secret from me? Like, why was nobody talking about sex? And the truth is, I was like, wow, you know what? It's because they didn't really know, because they were so repressed. Like, we didn't talk about sex in my family. We didn't really talk about it in a healthy, mature way in school. And so that put me on a path to really kind of focus on these two things. And they're so kind of, and we'll go more deeper into it, they're so really together. Because I think at the core, psychedelics teach us about our interconnection and oneness. And then sexuality and love is a movement towards that. It's a deep like movement towards connection with another, with ourselves. And I think both our divinity and our sexuality is a deep part of who we actually are.
Look, jump right in, Dr. Jahan. Okay. But I mean, I'm with you on a lot of the things you said, especially in regards to the conversations that need to be had. And it's amazing to me, like, this is probably side note or whatever, but I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who happens to be a teacher, and she was saying like, oh yeah, you know, the teenagers, they're having sex, and and then they don't understand the consequence. I'm like, huh? What do you mean? I feel like health class was all about anatomy, and you know, and everybody knew that procreation was a part of sex and all these different type of things. So I'm like, how do they not know? What are they teaching them in health class? And she tells me that it seems as if things are completely different now. So I don't know what they're learning when it comes to sex or health or what's going on in health class these days. But I think you're right. You know, there might not, it seems to be, I guess, not good education at school, you know, home, nor church or anywhere. So, and so you went on, you know, you've been on this journey and whatnot and stuff. I mean, people probably gonna be like, they probably just heard psychedelics and then like tuned out everything else she said. Be honest, you know, I guess do a deep dive in that and whatnot, because obviously it had a big impact on you and whatnot. It actually is reminding me of a testimony that I saw, and there was a gentleman that he said he had come to Christ and whatnot, but he still, I guess had some shrooms, whatever the case was, and that experience was, I guess, totally life changing for him or anything. I know that some people say like, taking things like that is like kind of, they say tapping into the spiritual realm illegally. Like, have you heard this? And like, have you experienced this? Or, I'm open to hear whatever you got to say in regards to that.
Yeah, it's the focus of my dissertation and the book I wrote that came out called The Psilocybin Connection, subtitles of Psychedelics, the Transformation of Consciousness and Evolution on the Planet, was that the first form of actual religions and rituals were those using psychedelics. Started when we were first primates. We were primates for like 50 million years. And then the weather patterns change in the African savannas, and we begin to like eventually move upright, So there's this transition from being primates to humans that's like 4 to 5 million years. And across Africa grasslands grow plentifully psilocybin mushrooms. There's over 200 different species worldwide. And there's archaeological cave paintings in those areas of Africa, at least dating back 12,000 years of mushroom use. But we see that the cave art use of mushroom use all across the world. And it's very simple because our ancestors would have used the plants in the environment, whatever they had around, looking for sources of food. And some of these compounds are really, really, really potent to create an expanded state of oneness, of connection, even of an increase of kind of a sexual drive. There's more of a kind of a stimulation in that direction. There can be aphrodisiacs in some sense. And so the theory is very simple. And now we know from the last 10 years from MRI studies that psilocybin stimulates the growth of new brain cells, right? And creates a hyper-connected brain state. And 65% of people have a mystical experience to the right set and setting. So the pieces are there that it was a part of the original part of humanity. And then we see indigenous tribes across the world still using psychedelics. So it's more that we're using in touch with nature, and that nature has been a portal to the divine. And then we've just been kind of cut off from it now for a large period of time.
I mean, I know there's definitely something to, in regards to the plants and whatnot, like you just said, having effects and things of that nature. I know they say that there's a lot of medicinal plants out there as well. And so it's interesting, again, like we kind of, instead of, say, for example, going and making your tea from the flowers or whatever the case is, we, kind of, I guess, focus more so on, medical practices and things of that nature and stuff. And, but I mean, I know there's something to like the home remedies and things of that nature. I know my mom, she swears by onion tea when you get sick. She's like, make an onion tea. If there's any snizzle or sniffle or whatever, she's going to tell you about the onion tea. She's going to tell you to put onion at the bottom of your foot and some socks, things of that nature. And I've actually been kind of like working on a children's book to kind of like incorporate some of those things just to kind of, I guess just keep it in kids' minds that, there's good properties to and whatnot. But anyway. So you went on a deep dive and you wrote your book and everything like that. Tell me more about that. What's going on with the book and stuff?
Yeah, it's been a great release. Came out a year ago. Been on like almost 70 podcasts this last year. So it's been nice because it was like 5 years of deep research. And while I was doing actually the academic research, I took many multi-year trainings, including Hakomi 2-year somatic psychotherapy training, like looking at therapy and psychology, but through the realm of the body and trauma. I've been a part of or taught in 7 different psychedelic guide trainings. And then there's been this other stream of interest that hasn't really been able to integrate, where I've done 7 different tantra trainings, like 7 different trainings on sexuality and connection. And it's such an easy, like, tricky intersection because the intersection of psychedelics and sex can be really, really healing and profound, but people can also abuse it. And that's happened a lot in the past because people are in an altered state and the practitioner or somebody around might cross boundaries. So it's just kind of like niche that's taboo. And yet I know it's had a huge impact on my healing, and I know the healing of a lot of other people.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people may have heard like some of these words before in regards to like tantric and things of that nature. Is there anything you can kind of like educate us on in regards to that?
Well, yeah.
Say for example, that's the first time someone heard the word tantric or things like that. Could you kind of share with us?
Yeah, there's so many layers to it, right? And there's so many traditions. It's practices that go back, it seems like a few thousand years. First started with the Hindus and then developed a lot in the East. And there's also shamanic practices with indigenous communities. And there's more like neo-tantrism of what's happened in the West in the last several years. At the kind of the core cosmology, and not everybody has to agree with this part, whether it's space psychedelics, different spiritual practices, there's a sense of oneness, like we're all one being, right? And there's this big sense of love and fulfillment with that. And at some level, like even at the Big Bang, there's this oneness, and then it seems to split into many beings. And at the core, from this tantric approach, there's two beings. One's male, one's female, right? There's a masculine essence to the universe and a feminine essence to the universe. And it's their love and interplay, and it's their sexuality that create the entire cosmos. And so you're kind of really tapping into these energies of deep masculinity, deep femininity, and we all have both for sure. But you're bringing that into sexuality to play with like these polar opposites, like a yin and yang, where somebody's playing a positive charge, somebody's playing a negative charge, and that creates a lot of electricity, right? And so you're bringing that internally within your consciousness, and there's a lot of body-based practices to like really awaken the body. You know, when we feel like a sexual energy in our system, we're really alive, we're really present, we're really pleasurable, our heart is open, it's very healing. Right. And so there's skills to cultivate that with yourself and a partner. Right. So many ways to look at Tantra, but it's kind of like really coming at it consciously through a spiritual lens and using it to really engage the body.
Okay. Well, hopefully that, educated us a little bit more in regards to that, just in case anybody, wasn't aware and things. I mean, I definitely think, sex is a spiritual act and everything. There's things that you said that, I know, believe me, I guess myself included and whatnot, I'm probably going to be like, oh, well, I don't necessarily agree with what he said about this or that or the other. But in regards to, again, spiritual healing and whatnot being a part of sex and stuff like that, I mean, I can totally understand. And I do think, and in my opinion, I would say that God created it to be that way. And I think that's why it's so important, the way it's done and all these different things, because it can be a healing thing, or it can also be a thing that, we see all around us ways that it's been tainted and ways that it's like, used in a negative light. I'll just put it like that as well. And so, because you just mentioned earlier as well, like people in certain situations could be taken advantage of by, certain things and whatnot as well. So how do you find balance when it comes to all of these different things that you studied and things like that? Like what, I guess what has gotten you to, I guess, your point of healing, because I know you were saying that you were actually going through some things as well. And then I don't know if the book and whatnot helped you to heal along the way as well, or if you were already healed and then you wrote the book, however it was. But yeah, like what got you to be here today to, in this place and everything?
I guess really just staying true to myself and following my own path and wherever that's unfolded. And by its essence, like it should constantly be mysterious. If I'm cracking into new ground within myself or in reality, I'm going to be constantly surprised and in awe and excited. And so even though a lot of my interests have been the same for the last 20 years, they've opened up into avenues and doors I wouldn't have foreseen, whether it's like all these other trainings. Working in this intersection seemed not probable at 18 like I wanted to, but psychedelics were still way on the illegal side, really not known. Research was repressed. And now it's I'm going to the largest psychedelic conference ever next Tuesday. It's in Denver, Colorado. It's 10,000 people. It's psychedelic science. It happens every like 4 or 5 years. And you're going to have like the top researchers from around the world really sharing their knowledge. And it's strange. It's like as amazing as psychedelics are. It's just like there's also, a huge repression of sexuality and owning it. And I feel, I think we need to claim it to really claim our power. There's healing, but then there's like a lot of power in owning your sexuality. It's a deep part of your vitality. And I would even call it like it's a soul quality. Your body, our bodies were created from sexual energy. Like it's that simple. Like every animal that's ever existed was created through sexual energy. It's that fundamental to our soul. And so many spiritual practices, because of the repression taboo, because they don't know how to engage it and they've shamed it and judged it, have left it all out of their spiritual teachings. Right. And we're talking about the thing that interests us most, that creates and sustains life at the core deep level. And we're not really engaging in a very healthy way. So there's a lot of meshing here, at the core. As I've mentioned, it's just more deep interconnection between everything is like the main goal between sex and psychedelics.
So I find it interesting, this correlation between sex and psychedelics state? Because I think when people hear, and maybe it's just me, I don't know, but like when I'm hearing psychedelics, I'm only kind of thinking about 60s and mushrooms and anything that's taking you, I guess out of your, I don't know if you would say your mind, whatever the case is. Like, so am I missing something, or is that exactly what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, a lot happened in the 60s, and if anything, like, let's just say that, like, a lot happened in the 60s, and some things we can say that happened because of the psychedelic use was an expansion in culture and consciousness, including a sexual revolution, an uprising of feminism, a change in politics, a movement towards social and racial rights, right? An explosion in technology, including the personal computer revolution, a change in the arts and music and movies, right? So consciousness expanded in every direction. And the change happened so fast that it was shut down by the prior generation, right? So that's kind of what occurred. And so what these substances do, and LSD, psilocybin, DMT, they tend to expand our consciousness in all directions. So the biggest shift they've seen after 20 years of studies in personalities is a trait known as openness. The system becomes less rigid, our psychology, and more open to new possibilities. With that comes more creativity. And this openness also includes an openness to changing, our sexuality and how we see it. Because for a long time, it was kind of very patriarchal and rigid. And now people are kind of able to embrace new ways of relating, like polyamory and so on, largely because they were first stimulated and saw that the world isn't what they think it is. Like, there's so much more that's possible, and that's like the first little shift that allowed so much to unfold.
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, I'm sure this conversation go a variety of ways, honestly, because I'm sure all of these things are like huge topics in its own, like just the psychedelic part, just the sex part, the consciousness and all that and whatnot that you were mentioning as well. I'm not sure where we should go. which way should we go? I'm not exactly sure at the moment. We'll see. So I guess I guess I'm kind of not just curious, but like, so do you feel like it's a good thing to mix the two and things like that because of the things that came from it and the art and all that type of stuff? Because that's what it kind of sounds like. And I guess from another perspective, it seems like it's not necessarily or maybe there's certain things maybe that we shouldn't be tapping into in regards to maybe seeing the other realm or all these different type of things at the moment and stuff. I think a lot of my viewers and people that watch, this type of stuff or whatever, is probably going to be like either not understanding what you're talking about or why you feel like it's important or things like that, or they might look at it from that angle. So I guess if you could explain to a person, like, I guess not just the positive, but like the why is it important, for there to be conferences and then the research that you've done and the other research that people are doing and everything like that. I think that might be, I guess,
let's go there. Because the science itself has been super fascinating. And so first to say, because people might be able to kind of just grasp that these substances tend to make us more sensitive in our feeling of our body, more sensitive in our emotions, more sensitive in our thinking, right? It kind of opens us up to a new layer of reality. So there's a lot of potential there, right? Including connecting with a partner. You're more sensitive and you can see them more clear. You're more in an expander state. Like, there's more sensuality. There's a lot that's there. The hard side is you're also more vulnerable, and that could be a positive and a negative. You're more vulnerable. We are more open, the more we can connect more deeply, right? So there's more fulfillment, but we're also more vulnerable to getting hurt, right? And being dropped and not seen and attuned to. So there is a side when we're mixing it. It is like we're playing with a very powerful thing, and it needs to be done in the right container, right? And so with the right kind of people. So we should be very, very selective. But in terms of the psychedelics themselves, of why they've really accelerated in interest, the last 5 years is well, we have found now that with psilocybin mushrooms, for example, in therapy, there's an 80% success rate for treatment-resistant depression. These are a population where they've tried every modality, every medication, every form of therapy, and nothing has worked for them. Mushrooms have cured 80% of them. Right. So mushrooms is a lot more effective than even most medicines out there. And this is after 20 years of research. Like, we're moving towards the third stage of FDA trial studies where mushrooms and MDMA are going to be federally legal in 2023 or 2024. Like, doctors across the US will be able to prescribe this for therapy. So it's huge. It's taken 20 years. It's around the corner. MDMA is successful for treatment-resistant depression. for PTSD. So PTSD, you've been raped, you've gone to war, you're stuck, you're in this trauma cycle you can't get out of, you can't have relationships, right? There's a lot of shame and guilt there. 80% of that population that's been stuck in that cycle for long periods of time can get out of it with the help of MDMA, because it takes away fear and opens up our hearts. Right. So there's a lot of varieties of how these have been incredible life-saving medicines. I think it's like 21 veterans commit suicide each day because of PTSD. So we've really focused on the veteran population, so on political sides, everybody's really, really on board. So that's one of the reasons psychedelics have gotten really, really big recently, is because anxiety and depression have really gone up. And when anxiety and depression is up, libido's down, right? People, you don't feel good about yourself. You don't feel good enough. You're feeling disconnected. Sex isn't much of an interest. So it got me out of depression. That's why I got into this, about 20 years ago. But I've seen hundreds of people's lives change, and now it's, again, where it's coming around the corner, where it's very reasonable to assume every town is going to have a psychedelic clinic, because it seems to be just in statistics the most effective form of therapy we have, right? And so that's why there's a big interest in that topic now, and I see it merging. So I've worked with a lot of clients, and the worst traumas I've seen is sexual trauma. Right? Like it's I think it's 1 in 4 women, 1 in 6 men. And it affects, because it's such a deep part of who you are. It affects your confidence, your self-esteem, your sense of safety, right? It could take decades to heal. If it ever does, it affects all your relationships, right? A lot of the trauma, and I think this is a lot more wide than people really are aware, is early sexual abuse. Normally a family member, a close friend around of the family, an uncle, a grandfather. It's really, really, it happens a lot. And so this person hides with shame and pain, sometimes for decades. Their family doesn't know how to hold it, if they ever tell their family, and it affects their whole sense of self. And I've seen a lot, it's not a guarantee, but I've seen a lot of people heal from that, because there's a lot of shame. It happens to lots of males too. It just happens more with women. And so that's one way I've seen, because it's the deepest trauma, because it's a deep part of our being. And even that, I've seen people come out of it, because talk therapy has only been able to go so far. It's helpful, but this kind of works at a deep kind of sore psychological kind of energetic level, and kind of helps bring the repressed memories up. I've worked with people where they felt stuck for 30 years and they didn't know why. And then I gave them psilocybin, and these memories of early sexual childhood abuse that they had repressed comes up to the surface, and suddenly everything in their life makes sense. Why they've had addiction for 30 years, why they've been stuck in certain ruts, because it was too painful as a child to have that memory that your dad did something to you. It's too much for a child to really make sense of that, so it represses it. And now in their 50s, 60s, 70s, or sometimes 30s, they're able to integrate this and move forward. So many ways they intersect, and there's so many varieties of levels of why the medicines have been so potent for so many.
We definitely have had several conversations on GSL about, all of those in regards to, abuse and PTSD, these different things. We even had someone that came on talking about, DID and things like that. So, yeah, I get it. It is a form of, healing the situation or helping to heal the situation, things of that nature. Again, on one hand, a natural plant or whatever the case is does sound better than, a concoction of chemicals, whatever the case is, in regards to that and stuff. Now, again, I think, for example, a believer or someone that, reads the Bible or whatever the case is would probably think, well, this sounds like it's becoming an alternative to the Holy Spirit. It sounds like it's becoming a alternative to allowing God to heal us and things of that nature. So I guess I'm curious to know, like, for you, like, do you feel like that's something that goes hand in hand along the healing with God, or if you're like, oh, well, it is an alternative. It is a, I know that's deep and stuff. I don't know.
No, it's perfect. It gets to the core of. It gets to the core of the way I'm wired and my interests, because they are one and the same. They go one in hand. That God talks to us at every moment through everything, whether it's our own intuition and body, the people around us, the environment, and through nature. And so for me, it opened me up to that reality. As I mentioned, I was suicidal and depressed and became an atheist as a teen, and this opened me up to a deeper relationship with God. So it's done that in my life. I know it's done that through lots of people's lives. Like even in the 60s, because people kind of went to psychedelics, and a lot of people changed and worked towards yoga and meditation. You know, a lot of people moved towards the spiritual practices because of these experiences, because they were kind of broke the regular realms. And then we've seen through indigenous like tribal societies across the entire world, it's a deep part of their spiritual practice. I am very grateful and lucky I've got to train within the Mazatec mushroom tradition, which is indigenous tribes in Mexico. And it's through them that we learned the mushrooms in the 1950s. A U.S. banker went over there, had a ceremony in 1955 with this curandera called Maria Sabina. Then he published about his experience in 1957 in Life magazine, and we all became aware of mushrooms, right? And so we have this indigenous tribe that's actually also really integrated with Catholicism. So when I've gone over there and we have these mushroom rituals, they're praying to Mother Mary and Jesus Christ the whole time, right? And this is a way they kind of commune with that level of reality. So for me, they're one and the same. And that being said, you don't necessarily have to be spiritual to get the use out of it. You know, I think for me, the deepest healing has been the spirituality. The deepest healing in my life has been that God exists. That changed my whole game, right? And that was big. And I know other people that hasn't happened to them, but they've still gotten psychological benefits. So it's not necessary, but for me, it's a big part of the whole experience.
Yeah, I mean, I know, again, a gentleman came and, you know, shared how his practice of yoga got him closer and things of that nature. I mean, hey, I know it's my testimony, but it's laughable because some people might don't think I'm serious or whatever the case is. But, you know, again, God used my desire to, you know, God, sex, and love, or whatever the case is, for me to be here today and stuff. And so, I mean, I feel like God will use anything to draw us nearer to him. But I think also, and at least for people that read the Bible and things of that nature, I think there's something there where it's like not allowing anything else to, I guess, not get in the way of what he does, but like as alternative. Like I don't know if not saying it's not pleasing in his sight or whatever the case is. I guess only he even knows, and I guess only we can have that conversation with him in his presence and things like that. But yeah, I don't know if he would want us to replace his, for example, Holy Spirit with the things. But at the same time, for example, this is what got you closer or whatever the case is. So I'm not here to judge that or anything. I'm here to say, hey, you know, this is your testimony and this is what got you closer to, or at least understand that there is a higher power. And that's another thing as well. Like sometimes, because again, that question is very prevalent in these days and times where people don't believe that and things of that nature, which we all have the free will to do that because that's the way he created it to be and stuff. And so I think we can all ask the questions and we're all on our individual journeys to figuring it out or not or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, so now I do have a question. This is random. But I'm trying to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Did you say suicide mushroom? Is that what you were saying earlier?
Oh, no. I was suicidal when I came across mushrooms as a teenager. Like my life. So my mom was actually born in Mexico. She was more like of a Catholic kind of descendant. My dad was born in Iran, so more Islamic. And of course, there's this huge crash of culture in my house. And I, out of my own will, around 7 through 11, I went to church, a regular kind of Christian Baptist church with my neighbors because I was curious. And so went to Sunday school every Sunday, did the whole thing. But there had been so much trauma and pain in my life. By the time I became like 13 to 15, I was like, you know, how could there be this much pain if God exists? You know, that was like a really big thing my life was really hard. The life of my family was hard. They're illegal and immigrants. And like, I saw a lot of people even around me all around. And then it was easy for me to see, you know, it's always kind of hard to name, but it's true. Like there was a lot of hypocrisy I saw in religion, and not to say that's an expression of God. That's an expression of the way humans are figuring out how to live, right? And so that really kind of drove me away from organized religion. And then I was like, fuck, like I got to claim myself as, you know, in my own personal power, you know, and we're kind of creating my reality and kind of own my own life. And so I went through that for a few years, kind of existential thing, like what am I going to do with my life? What's it all about? And that's what was super unexpected. I took mushrooms on the way to a concert. And then like I had this experience of dying, which was super not expected. I came to have a fun time and I was too curious. So I kind of let go. So it's pretty common in these psychedelic experiences to go what's called through ego death, this experience of death and rebirth. So I let self die. And then I found out I was eternal, that we're all eternal souls, right? And there's a deep intelligence connecting everything. And I got to have this dialogue for a while. And I've had hundreds of trips since, but none have been that powerful because there's only, it's only one time I really got to move to like, oh my God, there's a spiritual reality. And so, mushrooms aren't suicidal. They help with suicide. It's not a guarantee, but it seems for me like through 20 years of constant clinical studies, about 20% of people do heal when they're like that depressed.
Well, thank you for sharing that as well, and being transparent about your that part of your testimony. I just call it testimony, but your story, however you want to look at it. But that's very interesting. I don't know if it's too much. You could be like, "Bro, I didn't come here to talk about that." Now I was going to ask, like, so what? So you said it was because your family were immigrants, or it was the dynamics between the two different religions. Like, what was the thing that was like hard for you at that age? Because I mean, I have a 4-year-old son, and I mean, I would hope that, he doesn't feel like I know 4 and 7 is different as well. I get that, but like it was an early age for you. So what was the, if you don't mind sharing with us, like what was the difficulty in that early age?
No. Thanks for asking. I mean, I think there's a lot there. The specific cultures my parents came in, like they have their own shadows. There's different kinds of repression in both cultures. And they're doing their best. And then they were socially, economically, those cultures weren't doing well. And so my parents moved here to create money to support their families back home, right? And because of the laws, they were illegal for a while, so it was even hard to find a job, figure out the language. So they had a lot of stress and a lot of pain here, and there was a part of their culture's physical abuse. I got hit a lot. There was a lot of emotional repression. There was a lot of things that happened. There's also a lack of just awareness around health and nutrition. So by the time I was 15, I weighed 250 pounds because we're buying the cheapest food possible, all these sugary drinks, right? So there's a lot of things that kind of led to like a lot of shame and a lot of pain and a lot of disconnection with no family, a lot of disconnection from society, right? And so a positive is because there's positive and negatives. Because there wasn't a sense of belonging, because I wasn't from this, I was born here, but from this country, and because there wasn't like I was just born into one religious system, I got to question a lot. So I'm like, well, where is my place? I'm a human citizen of the planet. I can't just be put to one country, right? So it got me to question religions and gods because there was all these kind of like conflicts around. So it brought some freedom, but it also disconnection, So that's kind of led me towards that path, and eventually a lot of just contemplation. But that same pain and trauma eventually turned to a gift, even though you had to sit there and kind of digest a lot of pain.
I totally understand. Again, thank you for sharing that piece of your life. Because I mean, I just was curious because again, when people hear about things happening at young ages and stuff, they might be like, "Oh, well, you're a kid. What's your problem? Go get some ice cream, throw rocks," But kids are going through a lot of things. You know what I mean? Kids are going through a lot of things. Even all the things that you mentioned earlier and whatnot. Again, if a person is taking advantage of kids, that's a whole nother level and stuff. But and it affects kids in different ways and stuff. And then you're dealing with the thing you see. And I know I don't know if I should say it. I'm not no judgment on your parents. I'm sure they got together because they were in love. I don't know or anything like that, but I'm assuming, if they got married and whatnot, they put aside whatever differences that they had, at least to get married, or whatever the case is and stuff. And I guess it just reminds me of the Bible phrase. It's like, oh, I'm being unequally yoked and X, Y, and Z. But you're sharing a testimony of what it looks like beyond just the two individuals. And I think there's a lot of things that's like that in life that we don't realize that will affect our children and our community and everybody. I feel like there's a lot of things that's like that in life where we're like, oh, this thing just only affects me, it don't affect you, and at the end of the day, no, your choice affects me too. Like your choice affects my family, or my choice affects me, my family, and everyone around me and everything like that. Even the choice of suicide, that's another thing as well, where it's like, people feel like, oh, if I take my life, because no one cares, but you forget about your family, your mother, your, whoever's around that you don't feel like cares is all affected, and whatnot. Anybody that you've ever encountered will be affected to hear that you're gone and things like that. So it's just different things that we got to learn along the way. When it comes to that, and hopefully, people are able to, I guess, either build that relationship with God or like get back, that, so then they can have the hope and whatever it is, so they don't just lean into the thoughts and things that come in our minds when we're in those dark places and stuff. Unfortunately, everybody doesn't get a chance to, some people just lean into it and then, they make their choices and things. But on the flip side, I guess thank God that you were able to, I guess bounce back and find some healing and find some, I guess some solace with those things and whatnot. I found it interesting that you shared about the concert as well, because I want to say last year, if I'm not mistaken, I've been hearing a lot of things in regards to these concerts, in regards to like what people are experiencing there. I'm pretty sure you probably heard about what was the name of it? It was like a festival or something last year that I guess you would call it like a stampede, but basically a lot of people ended up, getting killed, I guess, because people were getting crushed trying to leave the place. It starts with an A. It's not in my, I can't think of the name at the moment. I keep wanting to say Aerosmith, but it's not Aerosmith. It was something else. Astro World. Yeah. And there was this gentleman there. You remember when that came out and whatnot, and what the news reports was coming out about that. And then there was a gentleman that was saying like what he was experiencing felt like hell or felt like death, and when things like that. And so so that combination of like, what was that like? Does that sound similar? Like, I don't know, were you able to hear any reports or any testimonies from that, but did you have a similar type of experience at the concert alongside with the mushrooms or whatever that you took? Like, or what was that? Would you like to tell us a little bit more about that?
No, I'd love that you brought that up. I've been to well over 1,000 concerts. It's been a major part of my life, right? Since age 13, 14, 15. And, again, not conventional, but that's like the early form of kind of my sense of spirituality. Started to worship the same way people go to church and they sing gospels and they all feel connected because we're all singing together and you're part of this large group and you're really emotionally into it. I found that in collective music, right? And so it brought me a lot of therapeutic release, a lot of empowerment, a lot of freedom to be where thousands of people all singing the same song and really going at it. Like I already have tickets for like another 7 concerts coming up, so it's been a big part of my life because that's where I found my connection. And it is two-sided where I was just at this concert, this one was a metal festival, was it a month and a half ago in Vegas, called Sick New World. 65,000 people, right? 65,000 people in one fucking festival. So it's like seas and seas and seas of people, and at the front, people are getting crushed, and the musicians have to, because of that specific thing that happened afterworld, musicians, thank God, are becoming a lot more aware and careful, and I've heard musicians talk about it because do they constantly stop the show every 5 minutes nonstop because that's happening at the front, and sometimes things aren't really happening, so do they keep breaking up the music because there's thousands of people watching? But at this one, they did every 15 or 20 minutes. There's a lot of pressure coming from the back, and people are being pushed against the rails. There's a strong mosh pits, there's a possibility if somebody falls or you're dehydrated over there, you can't get to water, you can't do a bathroom if you're in the middle of the crowd. If you fall, collapse, people can step on you, and so it can be a harsh environment. At the same time, more often than not, it's positive, and yet the stakes can be high because somebody just went out to have a good time and they suffocated and died. Right?
Yeah, that's on a whole nother level. So then when it came to that first experience that you had, I guess with the psychedelics and you learning that there was a higher power and things like that, can you explain? Because for me, I guess I've never experienced like seeing anything outside of, I've experienced feeling, in regards to, I feel like, again, the Holy Spirit when I'm singing, or like you just said, when I'm in church or whatever the case is. But I can't say I've seen anything. Now I do have the I guess experience of like feeling as if God is talking to me in my heart and mind. I have that, and then I do have like I guess the testimony about what they call sleep paralysis and things of that nature, and whatnot happening in things too. Because I feel like people, at least that again, that are familiar with Bible and that might be watching GSL and things like that, they're familiar with spiritual encounters in that aspect. But then when it comes to the seeing things and whatnot, and I think we're familiar with it in regards to Bible talks about it. It's obviously, it talks about there being, seen and unseen. So that tells me that there's other realms and whatnot, and stuff. Even if I haven't seen it, I do believe that it's there and stuff. But I guess if you as somebody that may have tapped into it or whatever the case is, can you kind of share with us what that look and stuff? Or
For me, it's personally also a game changer because of what happened in as a teen. I also became very rational and really focused on science, and so people couldn't have convinced me of God or of a spiritual reality. I had to see it and experience it, and I'm like, okay, this is real. And this is when I'm like, I don't have to assume Italy exists. I've been there; it's a real place, And so some of the biggest shifts have happened countering other entities, other beings. First and foremost, because they seem very intelligent, very wise, kind of ancient, and they're outside of me. You're like, this isn't a projection of my fantasy. This being knows a lot more than I do. And so that's been some of the biggest stuff is these kind of encounters. And I think it's a fascinating area of research that's finally starting to be looked at really specifically and strategically. And so there's a study being done right now by the Imperial College of London on DMT and spiritual like entities that people have been seeing, right? So this is at a formal college, in the UK, and they just started releasing some of the reports 2 to 3 weeks ago. So people can go on YouTube right now and see like the first panel on DMT and entity encounters. That being because DMT is a regular compound that your brain produces, right? It's found in like 2,000 plants. It's the main compound in ayahuasca. It's within psilocybin. There's so many ways it's there. But when people smoke it, for example, it lasts 15 minutes, but they found a way to make it extravenous through IV where people can be in a DMT state for hours. And so pretty often when you're in this DMT state, these spirits come up and talk to you and try to teach you stuff. Okay. So what's hard is these substances, if I'm looking at DMT or psilocybin, biologically, they're really safe, right? But there's this threshold of fear you have to move through to get into that state. There's this ego death. There's like, I'm letting go of my reality, myself. The world begins to change. It's like an alien's coming. Like you get scared. Like it's a big ass psychologically, right? So even though this reality, we've systematically figured out how to enter it, it takes a lot of work to get yourself there, Like if you're honestly, if most people really like having had this experience with God, if people ask them like, are you ready to meet God right now? It's the thing your soul wants the most. Most of the time people be like, no, not right now, not this second. Because it's a big thing. It's like we have to give up everything that's not true, everything we think we are, kind of really surrender ourselves fully into the unknown and the mystery. So it's a big ask. That being said, there's enough work on it done that people are curious. There's methods scientifically, it's been well studied. The chemicals are safe. There's tribes that have been doing it for millennia. Like the path is there.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not saying one way or another whether people should do it or not.
Totally.
I mean, you can say whatever, but I guess it's one of those things because I don't know. I guess like it's one thing to have a spiritual encounter and whatnot, but then it's a totally different thing to, I guess, really, really tap into something that maybe we shouldn't be tapping into. So I don't know. We don't see. I mean, but it's very interesting conversation that you brought here today, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you and your time and everything. So I'll leave the floor open. Like, is there anything else you want to share with us before you go?
Yeah, totally. People can check out more of my work on my website, psychedelicevolution.org. My book, The Psilocybin Connections, on all platforms. And it's found on Audible. There's audiobooks on it across all the platforms as is ebooks. So it's easy to get right now. And, it's based off of almost 20 years of research into the topic. So it's definitely most, comprehensive, view so far on psilocybin. Yeah.
Okay, and then where can we go for your website and your book and stuff? I can't remember if you said it.
Yeah. So the website's psychedelicevolution.org, and my book is distributed by Penguin Random House, which is like the largest book distributor. So it's found on every platform, like from Barnes and Nobles and Target to like Amazon. The Psilocybin Connection. You put that in, or put my first name, last name into like pretty much all the search engines, and it'll come up.
All right. Well, I appreciate you. But look, I don't know, Dr. Brother Jahan.
Thank you.
I appreciate
No,
you and your time and everything like that. Thank you for visiting us. And you're welcome back anytime.
No, it was an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the GSL Talk Show, and thank you to Dr. Jahan for joining us tonight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and check out the doctor and his endeavors. Good night.